Hello, today I'm going to be talking to you about a product known as Zearn. Zearn essentially is an educational resource designed to be used in kindergarten through 5th grade math. My presentation today is going to be composed of two parts. The first is the Zearn model. We'll talk about how Zearn is designed to be used, some uses for it in the classroom if you don't want to follow the model, and then I'm going to go into the process, setting up your class and the implementation, the different supports that the Zearn website provides, as well as how to progress monitor and all those other skills that are really useful to use when Zearn is being used in the classroom. Zearn is based on Eureka Math, which is the same as Engage New York, which is a kindergarten through 12th grade curriculum that sequences mathematical progressions into modules. So you're learning it in chunks as you progress through the mathematics curriculum. Zearn also correlates directly with the Common Core curriculum, which is really helpful because it gives you exactly how each lesson correlates with a specific standard. It is cloud-based and iPad compatible, so you don't need an app to use Zearn, which is really awesome, and students can log in from any device because it is cloud-based. So they're each assigned a username and a password, and then they can log in using the username and password from their houses, from the computer lab, if you have one-on-one devices in your classroom, or only 6 devices. In my case, I only have 6 devices, so students are able to log out of their account and then log in with using a different account. So it's not exclusive to a single device, which is really helpful. It is based on the rotational model. So you start with 15 minutes of whole class instruction and then divide the class into groups, and you do both small group instruction and independent learning on the Zearn website. The whole class instruction is based on 2 different parts, whole class fluency and a whole class word problem. Notice that there's only one. The whole group fluency is either oral or on a whiteboard, so each student would need his or her own personal whiteboard. And it would be like a warm-up. So there's purposes to build number sense predominantly, but it's also a fun practice of previously learned ideas or developing procedural fluency or a introduction of sorts to upcoming content. The word problem is designed to be only one word problem per day because as you're working through it together, you're evaluating different approaches that can be used to solve that word problem. The emphasis is on discussion of strategies, so not just doing the strategies, but talking about it and why and how it works, but also using multiple presentations and visualizing the word problem being solved. After the whole class word problem, you would move into small group instruction and independent learning. Half of the class would do one and half of the class would do the other, and each would spend 30 minutes at the station, as you would call it. The first I'm going to talk about is the small group instruction, which is when students would be coming to work with you. Here's where you'd break out your manipulatives like your fraction strips or your fake money, and definitely each student would need their own whiteboard. Zearn recommends because they'd be doing their work on a whiteboard, so it's not just a worksheet-based center. So at the small group instruction, you'll be working through problems with the students, and once again, the emphasis is on explaining your reasoning, not just following a process, but why the process is happening. The practice and the fluency all come with the independent Zearn learning. This station right here is the real interactive station. Like I said, while the students are doing small group learning, your other group is going to be doing the independent learning. So on their devices, whether it's computers or iPads or any other tablet, they're going to log into the app using their username and password and practice there. Students can be assigned different topics based on their skill level. So if you're working on fractions and one student's not understanding the fundamentals of fractions, they can be assigned that topic. And then the other students who are progressing more quickly could be assigned more challenging topics that are still fraction related. Direct instruction can also be skipped if the teacher allows. So even though the students are receiving small group instruction, they're also having direct instruction because some students need it approached from a different angle. There's a variety of reasons why they would have those really small chunks of direct instruction. Usually they're like a minute and a half. And so the students can watch those and go through the different levels of Zearn, which I will show you later in the presentation. But this would be a 30-minute period, and it would, like I said, vary per student. If a student's faster, he or she will speed through the process a lot faster. And the curriculum is designed to be broken up into 4 core days and 1 flex day. So they recommend Monday through Thursday being your core days and then Friday being your flex day. What a core day essentially is what we just went through the process. So you do the whole group fluency followed by the independent learning and the small group instruction. And then every Friday you would have a flex day, which means you would have stations almost like math centers. So you could vary these stations, personalize how students are spending their time on this website, as well as doing other activities. It would include more digital lesson time. So if a student is really struggling with fractions, you could have them just work exclusively on that Zearn website where they're struggling, but it also includes digital bonuses if you want to have them play more games or they need to use more one-on-one manipulative time. It's really personalized based on student needs. And you would obviously need to assess students on this day to figure out where they're at, but they also recommend scheduling whole class assessments on these flex days, which is why they're flexible. So you could either have centers, have assessments, and you're not going to break up that model of Monday through Thursday being the core instructional time. Another way you could use Zearn in the classroom, let's say you already have curriculum from your school or your district, you want to just use it for math centers. That's what I've been doing. It's been really awesome because it's personalized per student. So if a student's struggling with decimals, I can assign them decimals, and I can assign another student fractions, or this one's struggling with division, and each student's able to work on what they need the most work on. And in this way, you can really strengthen and personalize the learning process. It can also be used as a daily practice a couple of times a week. This is the most effective when you have a whole class set of devices because you could have 15 minutes scheduled for similar things. So for like math centers, you have students work on what they need to build foundationally or just practice with the current lesson. They could spend 15 minutes or 10 minutes a day just practicing that. It also could be used for individualized instruction for math lessons. I know sometimes my students, if I'm teaching a lesson, once again, on adding fractions, and my students don't understand what a fraction is, they could focus on what a fraction is during that time that I have independent practice. So the student's not going to be able to do the current lesson if they don't have those foundational skills. So they can work on those skills and build them until they've reached the level that I need them to be at for a lesson. Zearn makes this really easy because they do alert you when students are struggling with a concept continuously. So if you do need to intervene and be one-on-one, use those manipulatives, plan and schedule a time to work with that student, it tells you exactly what the student has continuously struggled with. This transforms the lessons because you're no longer having to schedule all those assessments. It assesses for you. So you can focus on education and intervening with students who really are struggling. I'm now going to talk about kind of how to set Zearn up and go into more depth about the progress monitoring and the curriculum relevance and all that fun stuff. The first step is setting up your classroom. Once you've logged in with your own username, you need to simply name your class and the grade level that you plan to be teaching with the Zearn app. When you begin, you'll first need to add students to the class. To do this, simply click the blue button. You can make adjustments to your class at any time. It'll show the existing students on the left, and you can add new students on the right. Simply type or paste student names and only include one name per line. Once it's done, you can simply click the next button. Zearn automatically assigns usernames and passwords to the students, but you're able to make edits to either of these. At my school, students use the same password for AR testing and to access the school website, so it would make sense for you to change them so they had the same password across all boards. Once your class is all set up, you're going to need to choose a starting point for all of your students. You're able to adjust this later based on student needs, but you'll need to choose the place you want everyone to start at first. For the purpose of this video, I chose to start with Mission 3, which is add and subtract fractions. I can also choose 4 different topics within this assignment, but I chose to start with A, which should be the easiest. Topic is selected, your class is all set up, and the only step is to print logout cards out for the student. Each student would have their own card. You could pass them out and keep a hard copy for yourself. As I mentioned earlier, Zearn can be edited to fit the needs of multiple students. You can select different lessons for different students. To do this, you need to simply return to the home page where your classes are. They'll all show up once the students have joined your class, and then you need to select the student using a check mark that you would like to make edits to. On the next page, it'll bring you back to the selecting topic page, and you can edit the selection here. You can change the mission, change the topic, and even do advanced settings, like making guided practice optional. This is a really great option for your more advanced students because they will need to watch the video being taught over and over again. To verify that you've made the proper edits, you simply need to click on the student's name. Here you can make edits to their lessons, to their information, or even remove the student from your class if necessary. One of the best things about Zearn is that it correlates directly with the Common Core curriculum. So you're able to set standards that students will be working on. Here it shows how the missions line up with the standards and how many lessons it would take to master that standard in general. Zearn even goes so far as to provide summaries for each grade level and lesson, as well as include the mathematical practices that subside with all the lessons. For each topic, they provide an overview of the skills and the pictures and the mathematical practices that will be focused on during the lesson. In addition, they do provide lesson plans for you. For example, here they have a teacher says, a student says, and if you look down, it has mathematical expression types as well as materials and emphases for the lessons. They also have a table of contents for you to easily find the information you need. Further way that Zearn provides curriculum support is by outlining the way that the student independent Zearn learning corresponds with the lessons that you're teaching. It provides the student outcomes and all the steps, like the number gym, that students will be completing for each step. As an educator, it's important to be aware of what it is exactly that you are assigning your students. Zearn lets you log in from a student perspective under the teacher account. However, I chose to log in as a student so I could also evaluate how the app responds to student use and progress monitors how the student is performing in each of these games. This is an example of one of the games that you play. Basically, these two are competing in order to slide down the mountain first by using math problems. They ask questions such as how many tens and ones. If you get the answer correct, your screen will light up green, and if you get it incorrect, then you will get a red. You do get the chance to retry if you do not answer it correctly on the first time. They also explore things such as place value and comparing numbers, so you're exploring the same topic from multiple different sides. And when you successfully completed the lesson by knocking down all the ice cubes, you have a Zearned It screen that pops up. Once you have successfully completed an activity, it will pop up on the screen. The newest activities need to be completed show up on the very top, and the ones that have already been successfully completed are on the bottom. A student should complete as many of these allotted tasks as possible in the allotted time. This is an example of Sprint, which is the fluency component for practice. It will time you for a certain amount of time, and you should answer as many questions as you possibly could in that amount of time. They start easy and get harder as the time goes on. When your time is up, it will alert you with a time's up marker, at which point you begin to check your answers. Zearn takes you through every single problem, and if you get it wrong, you need to correct the answer before it will let you move on, which is really awesome. Another cool component is that it lets you know how many you got correct, so it emphasizes accuracy and not just speed. Once your time is up, you get the opportunity to compete against yourself in round 2. The emphasis is never a competition with other students, but just improving what you have done, and it makes sure to tell you when you've done that successfully. Zearn is not just games, though. In addition to providing videos of direct instruction, the students are able to walk through a series of problems in order to answer them correctly. These problems are very hands-on and will let you redo them if you don't get them correctly. After a certain number of mistakes, it will ask if you would like some help, and the app will help you work through the problem. They're very visual problems, and so they're very hands-on, and they appeal to a variety of learners. They use a variety of different methods to successfully convey information to the students that are learning the application. Here, for example, the student is asked to shade 1/2 of the problem. They have to add the lines and then shade however many squares they believe would be 1/2. Before they can move on to the next problem, they would need to answer this problem correctly. The students are also provided with a worksheet to do with either pencil and paper, and this is something that the teacher could collect and view in order to monitor what the students have been accomplishing during independent learning time. At any time, students are able to access their own screen and monitor how many lessons they have successfully unlocked. Here, the student has not unlocked any, but they have plenty of time to do so. It allows students to monitor their own progress, but also helps teachers in goal setting, like unlock 3 by the end of today. Unlock a whole row by the end of the week. I'm going to finish with what I believe is one of the most powerful components of the Zearn experience, and that is progress monitoring. So there are 4 different screens. You have progress, pace, tower alerts, and sprint alerts, and all of them will inform you about how your student is doing. The first tab is progress monitoring, or you can monitor a student's progress through the curriculum. The G5M1 is grade 5, mission 3, lesson 1. You can see how many lessons he's completed. For each student, you can also click and see their status through an activity. As you can see, what John Doe is assigned, and he has not yet completed the sprint, math chat, or the tower activity for that particular lesson, mission, and grade level. You can do that for all of your students. The second tab is pace, which monitors how much has been completed in a week. So you can see if your student is actually trying when they're sitting there doing independent learning, and if they're progressing at a reasonable pace. You can also flip back and forth through the weeks for comparison and to see if progress is drifting off for some reason. So you can question students about that. The third is going to be your tower alerts. These are one of the most important, I think, because it alerts you when a student struggles repeatedly on the same concept in a tower. The tower is how students are building on a particular lesson and activity, so it's really important to know when they're not getting it consistently. This also can be sorted by number of struggles and the date and which students you want to focus on if you need to. The last one, sprint alerts, is similar. It will give you an alert when a student gets less than 10 correct in both rounds of a sprint. So if they get less than 10 in one round, that's fine, but in 2 rounds, then that is a sign for concern. As I mentioned earlier, the purpose of the sprint is not just speed, it is also about accuracy. So correctness does factor in, and students will learn that very early on, because if they're not getting them correct, then they're not actually learning, they're just pressing some buttons on a screen. This is the end of our presentation. If you have any comments, recommendations for new Sprint users or experienced Sprint users, please leave them below. I'd love to hear about what you have to say. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that you learned a lot from my presentation.